Well, after watching the tape, it kind of bared out a little bit like I thought after the game. I complimented Boise State in watching the game tape. I think that may be the best Boise team that we played since I've been our head coach. Maybe the first year they might have been as talented. I know they won the Fiesta Bowl that year. Certainly, I thought Rippon played really well. There's certainly things that we should have done better, but he was in a groove, and they've got a good running attack, and they're good on defense. The muff punt and the block punt certainly did not help at all, so it was a kind of a whole calamity of a lot of things that we've got to get corrected before we play a really good Hawaii team this next week. I do think we'll be without our punter. We'll find out a little bit more as the week goes along, but that's going to be a challenge for us right there. Guys bounce back. We did practice yesterday. Typically, we don't practice on Sunday, but we're going to have a little bit of a change of schedule. So I thought our guys had a good attitude, and the best thing I know, and our players know when you get started on your opponents, correct the things that you need to correct and quit looking in the rearview mirror and look forward. I know that we're 2-3 right now, and we're playing a 5-1 Hawaii team over there who typically plays really well on the island, and Coach Rolovich has done a good job. And so moving on to Hawaii, I think first of all they're putting up some terrific numbers offensively. McDonald, their quarterback, a big, tall, angular guy, puts the ball where it needs to be. He's completing, I think close to 70% of his passes. A great touchdown to interception ratio, 24-2. So they've got a good system there. They've got some capable wide receivers, and they can run the football defensively. They're really solid. They play great technique, and they run around. And so, big challenge for us, but a great opportunity. So at this time, questions. Yes, Robert.
With Tim probably being out, I see Ryan on there. Is that your best option? Do you have another backup plan?
No, I think it's a good option. We're going to look through some things to see who's punted the ball within our football team right now. But Ryan's our next guy. We've had him in fall camp. He's done a good job, and I'll continue to evaluate how Ryan does.
So you haven't got any official diagnosis on Zelensky yet?
No. He's going to have an MRI today, and I don't think it looks very promising, but that's been surprised before. We'll wait for the doctors to come back from their assessment.
What other injuries concern you?
You know what? I really don't think we had anything. So going through a game like that, that's surprising because typically, in the past we've had more guys, but losing your punter, if that in fact happened, that's a big hit. And we're going to need to absorb that and make some plans. Yes,
you mentioned you practiced yesterday because you leave Thursday for Hawaii. It's like a short week.
Right.
I'm sure that's a big challenge of getting ready to have to make that trip, let alone a good football team. What are some of the other big challenges when you have to go to Hawaii and play, let alone the opponent you're playing, but just everything getting ready?
Your time table gets changed. Young people probably adapt to it better than coaches, but you're dealing with 4-hour time change. That game will be at 6 o'clock their time, which is your teeing off at 10 o'clock that night. So getting our players acclimated to the different time change is a challenge. Always when you're going over to Hawaii, I think it's just it's a great institution and with a proud football program, but there's always it just seems like more challenges when you're going that far. Whether lining up all the little things that go on, but Brent Vernon's going to go over there a day ahead of time. I think somebody else, our RD, is going to go over there a day ahead of time to kind of make sure everything's smooth there. And I just know through the years that they play really well on the island, and so that's a challenge in itself.
There was a lot of smoke. There was ash falling during the Boise State game. I know I had a problem breathing out there. Did the players find it difficult? Was there oxygen on the side available for it? And do you think that it affected the play inside of the game?
I don't really think it affected play. Before the game, I know the medical staff, the ADs, Coach Harsin and I spent some time talking, and there was a certain level that the doctors were comfortable with. We were within that goalpost, and so while it was somewhat uncomfortable, maybe, Boise had the same situation. I can't tell you some of our players who had asthma didn't get affected by it. I do think a couple of our defensive players were maybe a little bit more fatigued than normal, but I would attribute that to the fact that Boise was on the field a whole lot. And that in itself lies another challenge. You know, we've got to do a much better job staying on the field on offense. To flip that ratio around, we got to do a much better job getting off the field on defense. Some of that, we've got to work really hard to correct. Some of the things are correctable too. You know, the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that we had on the first drive was just case in point there. We were off the field, and so that's one isolated instance. But I thought we got fatigued, but I couldn't say it'd be easy for me to make an excuse. It was the Ashes. You may have been tired. I may have been tired. I don't think that was the reason why some of our players got tired. Yes.
I see on the depth chart, you had Kreider at center, Obeji at guard. Mm-hmm. Is you looking at probably sticking with that, or does it depend on Arnold's health, or how do you assess that?
I even think, we believe Patrick will be full go this week, but we're going to work with the rotation we've had probably too many disjointed combinations as it is, and so right now it would appear that Keegan will start at center and Eric will start, we call him Big E, will start at the guard position, and just so we can have some continuity, it's going to be imperative that we do a great job with that offensive line. But it's great to have Patrick back. I mean, we were scrambling there a little bit, between that and then Eric had the flu. He missed I don't know how many days. Football players are always going to have some challenges, but we need to play better in the offensive line.
You said it might be premature after the game to talk about the defense and what struggled, but after you watched the tape, what did you think about the tackling specifically?
Well, that's always, we talked at the beginning part of the deal that we need to tackle well. And there's two things that come into play with tackling. First of all, are your guys in position to tackle? And that's always a case in point. If you're not in position, then that comes down to what's going on with your scheme. Then there's times when their guy is in, we have a guy in position, and their guy, we don't tackle him. And I attribute some of that. There's certain things we can do fundamentally better, but really what goes on sometimes, their guy's just better than their guy. And I think it was kind of a blend. We certainly need to position some guys better, but I thought their running back was outstanding. I think he's an NFL player, and I think a couple other guys. And, they were as good. We played a couple other teams that I thought were good. Wazoo was good. We thought Missouri was good. That is a good Boise State football team, and I can attribute some of that to that. Yes.
I guess kind of following up on that, Coach, you're a defensive guy. You talk about field position and pinning teams deep. Boise State did have some long drives. You've seen teams. How concerning is it that teams are being able to drive long fields against your defense?
It's really concerning, and that's part of this combination of us playing too many plays in the first half. And that can be attributed to too many 3-and-outs in the first half. If you look back, everything was inverted against New Mexico State. I think we played 17 plays in the first half, and now we're starting to play 35, 36 plays in the first half. And that begins to have an impact, how much fatigue goes on with some of those guys. And so some of those drives, we've got to, as I was talking earlier, tackling better. There was a couple underneath routes that Boise threw that we didn't come up with a tackle there. We need to tackle better. And, certainly a lot of the scoring did not come about because of us turning the ball over. It came about because of some extended drives, so we're concerned about it. And this is, it ain't going to get any easier this week. And so we've got to get better there. Yes,
you mentioned the tackling, and look, you're in practice, you're not going to beat each other up, but you also, like you said, you got to tackle, you got to be physical. So how do you balance that when you got to improve there?
That's a great point, because Coach Hazelton and I had a long talk about that. We went into the game. Cash was just being able to go out and practice, had a brace on. Logan was banged up. So you don't want to bang your guys up in practice, but you got to tackle. I think this week will be, actually we're a little bit healthier, so we can tackle a little bit more in practice.
Craig, have you had a guy like Nico, a guy that kind of is deep on the depth chart for 3 years and then comes out and just kind of does what he does, and when healthy might be your offensive MVP right now?
You know, a long, long time ago, when I was a young coach at Duke, we had a guy that was very similar to that, ended up being the offensive player in the ACC that year. And, you know, he was kind of an unsung guy that just sprung into the limelight his senior year. I know this is the first play of the second half. You saw Nico burst in the secondary, and I know Boise has guys that can run, and he was pulling away from them. And so beyond just, okay, he found a crease and somebody screwed up, he's shown some really explosive ability, and we need to utilize that. And you know, that was his first game back. We need to utilize that more, and he needs to have more big plays. And he did against New Mexico State, and so it's great to see because that didn't come about. He's worked at that. Yes.
That questionable touchdown in part of the end zone that I was at, quarterback keeper goes over the top of the pylon. There was a review. Did you think it was in? Or
you know what? I really didn't spend much time with that. I know this is every play is reviewed. Every play is reviewed during that period. You know, to challenge that, basically they're already they're looking at it, and then you know, come on Sunday and Monday they get reviewed again. And so, from the angle I was at, we just move forward.
Great.
Yes.
See on defense, I know did Sidney play last week with that club on his hand? And is he available? And what about C.J. Colton this week? Where you have him?
We don't think C.J. will be back. We hope that he'll be back, but I'd say it's doubtful. And I want to be real clear on this too. I'm giving you information, not because I'm a good guy, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think there's a trend in college football where nobody talks about anything. So I'm going to continue to talk about guys. And if I ever get in a gray area, I just won't really mention it. But I you know, you guys got all the right to answer it, but it does kind of chap my butt that a lot of my colleagues out there are choosing, they don't say anything. It's like, there's a couple things, and I'm going to go off here. First of all, they don't let any players talk to the media. And they let one person talk to the media, and that's usually the head coach, and they don't say anything about any players. And I don't think that's healthy for college football. Maybe that's going to make football scoop, what I said. But, you know, we're going to give you information when I think it's, you know, warranted, and I'll never mislead you. So I would think that CJ would probably be doubtful this week. So that's my 5-minute rant. Larry Shiat used to do that, probably more so than I, but longer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's always amazing to me, but coaches do that, and I think it's a little bit unfair. The last thing I would say is just recognize that these guys aren't professional players. They're college players. They're going out there playing the best they can. Okay?
If Zaleski isn't available, how much confidence do you have in Galovich?
Well, I've got confidence, but I'm going to work with him more this week. You know, I know this. I go up to Jacoby, and I feel pretty good when I'm on the driving range, and when I get out there in front of a Cowboy Joe event and there's 200 people there, I don't do so well. So it's a different feel. So, yep, that's a golf course here in town. So, and I'm not a good golfer. I just in my mind I am. So.